Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and current events. I'm your host, Walter. Today, we're going to explore a thought-provoking article that caught our attention, which discusses the phenomenon of reality distortion in politics. The piece, written by Nick Danforth, delves into how some politicians, including President Trump, have been accused of creating their own version of reality, often at odds with facts and evidence. The article draws parallels between this behavior and the historical example of the Ottoman Empire, which, in its final days, produced maps that intentionally misrepresented the empire's territorial losses. This phenomenon is not unique to Trump or the United States. It's a global issue that affects how we consume and interpret information. Danforth argues that this distortion of reality is not just limited to politicians, but also involves the media and the public. He suggests that when engaging with a government committed to its own reality, analysts and commentators often feel pressured to make accommodations, leading to a form of sane-washing, where the president's actions are presented in a more favorable or realistic light than they perhaps deserve. The article raises important questions about the role of the media in holding those in power accountable and the challenges of reporting on politicians who disregard facts. It also touches on the idea that, even when faced with overwhelming evidence to the contrary, some individuals and groups can become so invested in a particular narrative that they refuse to accept alternative perspectives. As we navigate this complex landscape, it's essential to approach these issues with a critical eye, recognizing both the dangers of reality distortion and the importance of nuanced, fact-based discourse. By examining these phenomena and encouraging open discussion, we hope to shed light on the intricacies of modern politics and the media's role within it. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into the complex world of international diplomacy, where Pakistan has been making waves as a mediator in the conflict between the US and Iran. According to reports, Pakistan's government, led by Prime Minister Sharif, engaged in an intensive diplomatic effort to bring the two warring parties to the negotiating table. Now, some analysts have credited Pakistan's success to its strong relationships with both China and the Gulf states. Beijing, in particular, has been a key player, with Chinese officials publicly backing Islamabad's diplomatic initiative and encouraging efforts to prevent escalation. Meanwhile, countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia also have strong incentives to avoid a prolonged conflict that threatens energy markets and maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. But what exactly was Pakistan's role in these negotiations? Was it simply a messenger between the US and Iran, or did it play a more active role in shaping the peace process? Diplomatic sources familiar with the negotiations describe Pakistan's role as extending beyond mere mediation, with officials helping to identify areas of compromise, coordinating draft proposals, and working to keep channels open during moments when negotiations appeared close to collapse. Atlantic Council analyst Kugelman agrees that Pakistan was not simply a messenger in the US-Iran negotiations, pointing to Army Chief Munir's direct involvement in Islamabad talks. Three-way discussions were taking place, which goes far beyond the role of a country merely passing messages between two sides. That is direct mediation, said Kugelman. It's worth noting that the situation on the ground remains complex and fragile, with many challenges still to be overcome. However, Pakistan's efforts have been widely praised, with US Vice President J.D. Vance even joking about the close relationship he's developed with Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir. As we continue to follow this story, it's clear that Pakistan's diplomatic endeavors have significant implications for regional stability and global politics. We'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates as more information becomes available. Welcome back to Concrete Block. As we wrap up today's show, let's dive into the latest economic news from Canada. The country's inflation rate has spiked to 3.2% due to surging gas prices, which is having a ripple effect on various sectors of the economy. According to reports, the increase in food prices, particularly for items like tomatoes and bananas, is also contributing to the rise in inflation. However, economists are quick to point out that this growth is not necessarily a sign of a strong economy, but rather a reflection of external factors such as energy prices and geopolitical tensions. Some experts, like those from CIBC and KPMG, believe that the Bank of Canada will likely hold interest rates steady for the rest of the year. They argue that while headline inflation may be elevated, core inflation remains relatively stable, and businesses are not in a position to pass on higher costs to consumers due to weak demand. Others, like National Bank of Canada economists Mathieu Arsenault and Alexandre Ducharme, suggest that a patient approach is needed, as there are signs of a nascent economic recovery but still significant slack in the economy. They caution that workers may not be able to negotiate wage increases, which could limit demand and inflation. It's clear that the Canadian economy is facing complex challenges, and policymakers must carefully weigh their options to ensure stability and growth. As always, we'll continue to monitor the situation and bring you updates on future episodes of Concrete Block. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.